Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Royal Blue podcast. We have a view from the opposition show for you today, previewing Everton's match with Newcastle United at Hill Dickinson Stadium on Saturday. And here to tell us all about Newcastle United and the best way for Everton to take all 3 points is Newcastle United fan and host of the Everything is Black and White podcast, Andrew Musgrove. Andrew, how are things? All good?
Yeah, not too bad. And yourself?
Yeah. All good. Just sound like you're struggling there with a bit of a cold. Everything okay?
Yeah, this is my 4th recording of today, and I'm just about getting through. Just think I'm about to get that good old winter bug that seems to be doing the rounds. So hopefully, it doesn't hit us, but it feels like it's on the horizon.
Absolute trooper, absolute soldier for appearing on the show today. I appreciate your time and doing this view from the opposition. They all always come across really well and really popular on the Royal Blue podcast. So again, thank you very much. Just a quick question for you, Andrew. How are you set for safe internet connection?
Yeah, am I right? I think it's because we might use the same VPN. Am I right?
We do, yeah. You knew what I was trying to do there. For anyone who doesn't know, NordVPN protects you from viruses, malicious malware, as well as phishing sites. So to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/EFC, and our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you fancy taking a look, the link is in the podcast episode description box. Right. Andrew, down to business. Everton versus Newcastle United on Saturday, 5:30 kickoff. Everton always seem to play Newcastle, some sort of an evening game or a night game. I think I'm pretty sure the last time there was a daytime 12:30 or even 3 o'clock kickoff was a good 12, 13 years ago. What is it about this fixture that is always played under the lights, I guess?
I'm guessing it's because the TV companies know it's good drama most of the time, right?
Yeah, probably. You're answering one there, isn't it? I mean, what are your thoughts ahead of the game? Confidence for a win? I know Newcastle's away form has not been the best, so probably maybe a little bit of trepidation going into the game against Everton on Saturday. But, Newcastle, Champions League team, really good players. Surely you've got to be a little bit confident.
Not confident at all. Absolutely dreading it, to be quite honest. If this was at St James's Park, I'd be pretty confident of a positive result for Newcastle, but away from home, Newcastle are a totally different animal. They've got no bite, no fight about them. It's quite scary, the contrast between Newcastle at home and Newcastle on the road. It's been so long since we've seen a victory in the Premier League away from St James's Park. I'd go all the way back to April when they beat Leicester City. There's been flashes of the good side Newcastle are away from St James's Park, but for the large part, they've been pretty dire on the road, particularly in the last 2 outings in the Premier League against West Ham and Brentford, where they've taken the lead and then just crumbled against 2 sides that, with all due respect, Newcastle should be beating if they've got ambitions to get back at the Champions League next season. So, yeah, I'm not looking forward to this one at all. There's just something that is stopping Newcastle United clicking on the road.
Well, you say something there. I was going to ask you what you put this run down to, because you're 8th in the Champions League table, but obviously in the league it's in 14th on 15 points now. We've had this discussion plenty of times. At this moment in time, the league table is a bit crazy, I guess. I mean, I think we're 12th or 11th or 12th, and we're only like 2 or 3 points off 4th place. So it's not, the points tally is obviously quite congested there. But what you put that down to, Newcastle's form, is the Champions League proven to be too much of a distraction?
That would be the first assumption, but I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. The squad is good enough to deal with it now. They have been hit with a couple of extra injuries in Kieran Trippier and Emil Kraft, which meant against Marseille on Tuesday, Newcastle ended up playing Lewis Miley, who's a young centre midfielder, at right back because they just didn't have the personnel there. But the run stretches well before Trippier and Kraft picked up these injuries, and it's hard to really pinpoint what the issue is or why the issue is there. I mean, having Tino Livramento back and Lewis Hall back at right back and left back, hopefully that will start to see things turn around. They were excellent against Man City last weekend, and fingers crossed they can transfer that onto the road. But it just seems to be a mentality issue. You should not be going 1-0 up in 2 successive games and then leaving those games without 3 points. And there's mistakes as well in both of those games, as on Tuesday against Marseille, Nick Pope dropped an absolute clanger. He's been guilty of that in the last 3 away games, which have cost Newcastle valuable points. But if you're going to kind of try and nail it down to one thing, there just seems to be a bit of a mentality issue away from St James's Park. So whether it is home comforts, whether it is that cliche 12th man actually does make that much of a difference, whether it's kind of underestimating the opponents, I really don't know, because they shouldn't be this bad on the road, but they just are at the moment. So hopefully Eddie Howe can find the remedy. And from a Newcastle point of view, that has to start on Saturday, because if you guys win, Everton, you go 6 points ahead of Newcastle. And although you're right, the league table is quite congested, that's a lot of ground to make up, even at this early stage in the season. So this is kind of, in many ways, it's certainly a must-not-lose game for Newcastle, but for many, it's a must-win.
You mentioned Eddie Howe there, who, from my personal opinion, has done a fantastic job since taking over at Newcastle, and I'm sure you would agree with that. But what's the mood like among the fan base with Eddie now? I mean, it's a cliche, isn't it? Any managers under pressure after losing 2 or 3, games, or going on a poor run of form. So, from your point of view, or the consensus among the fans, is he under any pressure whatsoever?
No, none at all. I mean, they've won 6 on the bounce at home, and I think it's something like they've won 7 of the last 10 overall. So we focus on the away form, and it's horrendous. But if you look at the overall picture, they're not doing too bad, even though they're much lower in the league than they'd like to be. He's not under pressure, though, because the majority of fans believe he's the right man to turn this around. I think a lot of people understand that losing your first choice right back and left back to injuries is going to hit you, because unfortunately their replacements have been Kieran Trippier and Dan Burn, who are good professionals. I mean, Kieran Trippier is one of the best right backs we've ever seen in the Premier League, but he is 34 and he's no longer got that pace to get up and down the flanks. Dan Burn's probably never had it, and we have deeply missed Livramento and Lewis Hall. So I think people are waiting for them to get a run of games together, and hopefully things will turn around. But look, he's got to find the solution, because the big game coming up on the horizon is Sunderland in a few weeks' time, and the last thing you want to be doing is to go to the Stadium of Light having still yet to pick up a victory on the road this season. So it needs to change. It needs to change quickly, and I'm sure it will. But whether it will on Saturday, I'm not too confident from a Newcastle point of view.
Are Newcastle fans quickly reassessing expectations for the season? Obviously, the back end of last season, you qualify for the Champions League. So far, you look like you're on course to qualify for the knockout stages in the league phase. Things obviously can quickly turn. I guess the only way of qualifying for the Champions League this season is obviously by winning it, but then obviously getting there in the league position. So I'm out of 10 here saying that you would expect another 4th place, 5th place finish again for this season?
Yeah, I think the aim was Champions League football, and that's how you become an elite Premier League side, is by being in that competition year in, year out, and we managed it. And then the season after, we didn't even qualify for Europe, which was very frustrating, mostly on the kind of revenue book, because the money does play a huge part in it. You need that revenue to continue to buy the biggest and best players and continue to grow and improve your squad. And I think it's looking unlikely that Newcastle will qualify for the Champions League domestically, and they're not going to win the Champions League to do it that way. So maybe the aim is now, Europa League, Europa Conference, just some sort of European football, because I think in the back of the minds, and I'll be quickly racing to the front of the minds of the lose on Saturday, is that we've got some tremendous players in the squad, but they are ambitious players, and you would be right to assume that one of their conditions on the top of their list to stay at Newcastle would be Champions League football. And if Newcastle don't get it, where does that leave them in terms of the demands and desires of Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes perhaps, and a few others? So yeah, we're going to keep everything crossed that they can go on this amazing run starting on Saturday and somehow get back up towards the top 4 or 5.
It's certainly surprising where Newcastle are in the league at this moment in time. What I would say is that obviously the away form might be not where you want it to be, but only was it the weekend? Newcastle had a fantastic win against Manchester City, a team who were being tipped, challenging for the title and going on win it. Is it just a testament at this moment in time to how competitive maybe the league is? Even the lower based teams in the league, the mid-table teams, everyone's kind of beating everyone, and I think that's probably reflective in that mid-table points total, I guess.
I mean, I can see where you're coming from, but I don't really accept that, especially from the point of view of where Newcastle want to be. There's no easy game in the Premier League, but there is no excuse to be 1-0 up against West Ham, considering everything that they were going through. They hadn't won in so long. Nuno, even though he'd only just been in the job a few months, was under extreme pressure. And they go and lose 3-1, and it was a terrible performance. Brentford, you're 1-0 up against a decent enough side, but then you watch the goals that came, and it was all of Newcastle's own making. Nick Pope rushes off his line to punch the ball. He finds himself in no man's land. Then Dan Burn, having already been booked, doesn't get it taken off. He then concedes a penalty, which should have been a penalty, but was overruled by VAR, doesn't get taken off. And then 10 minutes later, commits another foul. It's a penalty, gets sent off. And it's especially lately on the road, same with Marseille in the Champions League on Tuesday, it's all of Newcastle's own making. As good as the opposition are, might be, could be, the majority of poor performances and poor results on the road this season have been down to Newcastle's own mistakes, and that's the frustrating thing. You chuck in performances like the one against Man City, which was Eddie Howe's 100th win as Newcastle United manager, and for me, that performance on Saturday against City is in the top 5 of his wins out of the 100, because it was just a tactical masterclass against one of the best sides in world football. It was absolutely brilliant, and yet every Newcastle United fan leaving that ground on Saturday would have said something along the lines of, they'll get beat next week off Everton, because this is what Newcastle United at the moment do against the very best. No disrespect to Everton, they raise their game, they go for it. They should have got something against Arsenal, they should have arguably beaten Liverpool, they did beat Manchester City, should have got something against Barcelona in the Champions League. And yet you look at Brentford, look at West Ham, look at other, especially on the road, you go, did you deserve something? Really? No. But against the top sides, they're up for it, and that's the frustration. You've set the bar against City, you've gone to an average Marseille side, thrown it away, and again, no disrespect to Everton, you look at the levels of Man City and Everton, if Everton run wild on Saturday, I wouldn't be surprised at all, because Newcastle United, for some reason, struggle to get up for games that aren't against the traditional big sides in the Premier League.
Yeah, I guess consistency is key, certainly at the top end of the table. Just before we talk about the game itself, team news, injuries and etc., that sort of stuff, just a quick word on former Everton player Anthony Gordon. We've spoke about him previously when we've done shows like this, and I must confess that before we started recording this, I did do a little bit of research on your Everything is Black and White YouTube channel, and I did see a podcast, I think you maybe recorded it a couple of weeks ago, titled Anthony Gordon Out, Semenyo In, ? So is the bloom off the rose at the moment with Anthony Gordon? Is he struggling to impress Newcastle fans?
Yeah, I mean, that's wishful thinking, isn't it? I mean, Semenyo is an absolutely fantastic player. Gordon, look, I still maintain he's one of the most important players in the Newcastle United squad. And when he's on form, he'd be in that team without a shadow of a doubt. But recently, he's just not doing it. And we've talked about Newcastle having a mentality issue as a team, but he seems to be the definition of that. He gets up for the big games. Champions League, he's been explosive. He's been brilliant. But in the Premier League, he's been absolutely shocking. For England, fantastic. But for Newcastle United in the Premier League, you might as well not turn up. Might as well not have turned up this campaign. And you look at the stats, and it's something like 21 games without a goal and 19 without an assist in the Premier League. I mean, that is, for an £80 million winger, which is where I would put him at in the market, or certainly when Liverpool were linked to him a couple of summers back, that is absolutely dire. For England's so-called first choice left winger, that is shocking. I mean, you would argue he probably doesn't even deserve to be in the England squad based on those numbers. Now, obviously, he's got his talent, he's got his ability, form is temporary and all of that. But at this moment in time, Anthony Gordon is not in the good books of Newcastle United fans. Against Marseille, he tried. He was played up top through the middle because Valdemar was rested. But he was criticised for really lack of effort. He had one chance. It's a little bit difficult to judge him because it's not his favourite position. He should never really be played there. But Newcastle have got very limited options with Wissa still out injured. It just seems like he thinks he's at a level which he's not really or isn't consistently. And that's a frustrating thing for Newcastle fans. I think the question is like, what is he prioritising? Is it the World Cup in the summer rather than just basically doing the basics in a black and white shirt, and that's turning up in the Premier League? Still a fantastic player, and we're just keeping everything crossed that next time he turns out for Newcastle in the Premier League, he actually does something. But hopefully on Saturday, it'll be Harvey Barnes at left wing because he's earned it. He's been the only man scoring goals of late. So if Anthony Gordon starts ahead of him on Saturday, there might be a few disgruntled voices, to say the least.
Just finishing off there then on Anthony Gordon, you say obviously form is temporary. Is this something relatively new with Anthony Gordon? Is this just something that has happened this season? Because obviously you mentioned there he was linked with Liverpool for a 70-80 million pound move. Is there any question marks over whether his head is in the right place or anything like that with regards to Newcastle fans? Is his commitment still there?
He said was turned when that link was originally out there. It took a long while for him to settle back into his groove, but then he did do, and he was absolutely fantastic. Look, I mean, that was every player will want to move to a side challenge for the Premier League title. I mean, that's not Liverpool at the moment, is it? But look, I think if I was Anthony Gordon, the way I would look at it would be that who's going to spend £80 million on me when I haven't notched a goal in the Premier League in 21 games? Like, it's as simple as that. You can have the desire to move to a bigger club, and Newcastle fans have got no issue with that. We realise we're not a Man City or a Liverpool. The whole Isak situation in the summer was all about the way he handled it. But if I was Gordon, I'd be concentrating on trying to get back into form domestically before worrying about anything longer term.
To the game then, we all know Newcastle's centre and midfields is definitely one of the strong points, and obviously you've got them bought a top quality striker. Obviously you're obviously missing a top quality striker in Isak, but he's not having the best of things himself. So Walter Maid has been playing and making an impact. But how do you expect to see Newcastle try and play through Everton, or how do you expect Newcastle to build through Everton? Is it going to be pretty much through the middle of the park, through the centre, or are you going to use a Harvey Barnes on the wings for that pace?
It's really difficult to kind of pinpoint what they're going to do. On one hand, you would say that the best approach for Newcastle is to invite Everton on and hit them on the counter with pace. On the other hand, is it to get the ball into Valdemar? I mean, the big issue with Valdemar is that he likes to drop deep and bring others into play, but unlike Everton, there's not a number 10 there playing off him. So even though he's very good at getting the ball, he's a tall lad, but don't mistake how good he is with the ball at his feet. Can bring the ball out of the air. Like he's so good at doing it. There's no one around him, and the big issue has been that the midfield don't run on beyond him, and the wingers aren't running on. So he gets the ball, he's turning, he's looking to pass it, and there's no one to hit because they've not made the runs, and that's happened a lot previously. It's whether they can fix that in time for Everton, and I'm not too sure they're going to be able to. I mean, and it's difficult because his natural instinct is to drop deep, and if I was Eddie Howe, I'd be saying to him, well, you've got to sacrifice what you're very good at for what you're good at, and that's just be the last man on the line, get ready for a physical battle with Tarkowski and Keane. Don't worry about dropping deep. But I think it's just that instinct that you know what you're good at, and you can try your best, but you're naturally just going to kind of go towards what you know you can do very well. So whether it's kind of a question of discipline and what have you, it's just difficult. I mean, if they had you on Wissa, it'd be a totally different story because Valdemar could play that as that 10 and Wissa would play off him, but that's not the case, unfortunately. The fullbacks will be key as well if Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall play. Lewis Hall didn't start against Marseille because he's just come back from injury, so clearly Eddie Howe didn't feel he was ready to start as many games, 3 in a week. So I assume he will start on Saturday against Everton, as will Tino Livramento. And if he does do that, that really helps the wingers because they run into the space to Livramento and Lewis Hall, and really help Newcastle get up the pitch. And they're good with their delivery into the box, which might be music to the ears of your listeners and viewers, because I know that's kind of the bread and butter of the centre backs. But if they can get the balls into the box, then the battle between Valdemar, who's very good in the air, and those two central defenders is going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and I appreciate, you're probably not seeing as much as Everton as I have this season. So without putting you on the spot, I guess you can name a couple of the players if you want to. But is there any aspect of Everton's game that is concerning you from a Newcastle point of view? Is it a player? Is it players? Is it the way we're playing? Is it the way we're defending? Anything that you think, that really worries me for the Saturday kickoff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about the battle between Valdemar and the centre backs, because if Jacob Murphy plays for Newcastle, then it's literally one touch, bang, get the ball in the box. And I saw the Man United game on Monday, and that's kind of just what Man United tried to do, and it was relatively easy, give or take. 3 chances I think I saw Pickford tip around the post. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, because if Newcastle can't get the ball in the box and Valde can't have success with that, then he's going to drop deep. And unless the instruction has been made clear to run beyond them, then it's absolutely futile. And that just plays into any opposition's hands, let alone Everton. Recently, away from home, Newcastle have been really exploited at the midfield 3, just haven't turned up, and they've been able to be easily bypassed. And now against City, Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento were deployed kind of as 2 extra midfielders when City had the ball to stop them passing through the middle. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens again. If it does, I think that could really work for Newcastle United, because it stopped City coming through the middle, which they've been really good at, and it just shored up the space in which Brighton, West Ham and Brentford all exploited for Newcastle United. And in terms of personnel, I mean, Jack Grealish always worries me. And then Ndiaye, I think he's absolutely fantastic. I mean, Newcastle bought Elanga for 55 million in the summer as a right winger. I know Ndiaye can play across both flanks, but I mean, he'd be on my list of Newcastle. We're lucky enough to be able to sign anyone in the Premier League. He'd certainly be on the top 10 list alongside, as we've mentioned, Semenyo. But I think he's a fantastic player to watch. He really, really is. And like I said, Jack Grealish has got a bit about him as well.
And obviously, Newcastle will be paying a visit to Everton's brand new stadium. What have you made of, how Everton have transitioned from Goodison Park into Hill Dickinson? And, are you a fan of, the design of the stadium, I guess?
Yeah, it looks absolutely fantastic, especially inside. The outside of it, I'm not too big a fan of, but I'm not going to cast a full judgment until I see it in person. Unfortunately, it won't be this weekend, but I do hope to pay a visit at some point. I'm just really intrigued about the similarities, of leaving a ground full of history and memories, and I'm sure it was difficult for you and your listeners and your viewers to accept that Goodison, at least for the men's side, would be no more, and that's the issue and the dilemma that we're facing here. Do we move? Don't we move? Will a brand new stadium rip the soul out of the club? For what it's worth, I think it would be the right thing to move from St James's Park in the world of PSR, whatever it's going to be called next season. You need to make sure that you've got a stadium that can not only offer the very best football experience, but concerts, boxing, all of that. St James's Park can't do that, and that's what they need to make sure that every revenue stream is tapped into.
Okay, Andrew, we'll finish off with score predictions for the game. I've predicted a 1-0 win for Everton. I'm going to go positive. Can Newcastle stop the rot away from home, or will it be an Everton win?
I'm going to get this prediction out before my voice totally gives up. I think it's going to be a 3-1 victory to Everton.
Wow.
I think Newcastle will do as they have done in the last 3 away games. They will take the lead early, and then they'll sit back and they'll just collapse.
This is not usually like you, Andrew. Usually, even in the face of adversity, you're usually quite buoyant. So obviously, this cold that you've got is taking hold far too much. I did not expect that prediction whatsoever.
Wait, honestly, the last 3 weeks, it's just been rinse and repeat. They were much better against Marseille than they were against Brentford and against West Ham, but they're just a limp animal on the road, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better for Newcastle on the road. And obviously that's just heading down to Merseyside on Saturday. I can't say anything but a defeat for Newcastle, unfortunately, from my point of view.
Okay, we will leave it there, Andrew, from the Everything is Black and White Newcastle podcast. Thank you for your time, and we will see what happens on Saturday. That is it for your Royal Blue View from the Opposition podcast, and we'll see you soon.